When did he might end his life become an excuse for everything? My brother Jason is 30 years old and hasn't worked since his football career ended. He was going to the NFL until he tore his ACL and MCL senior year. The doctor said he'd never play professionally, and I watched him sob in that hospital bed. He's lived with my parents ever since, and I genuinely feel bad for him because he lost everything he'd worked for. My parents constantly remind me that Jason almost killed himself after the injury. They found him with pills once and had to call 911. Since then, they've done everything to keep him happy and stable. They say any stress could push him over the edge again. I understand their fear because I love my brother too. In January, I moved back home after losing my job in layoffs. I felt like such a failure at 26. Moving back to my childhood room. My parents were supportive but kept comparing me to Jason, saying at least I could still work. They asked me to pay $600 monthly for rent, which I understood since times were tough. I met my girlfriend Charlie 4 months ago, and she brought light back into my life. When her roommate kicked her out suddenly, my parents said she could stay temporarily. I was so grateful and thought maybe things were improving. Jason even seemed excited to have someone new around the house. But Jason started acting strangely around Charlie immediately. He would stare at her during dinner until she'd look down at her plate. When I mentioned it privately to him, he laughed and said I was being paranoid. He said after years of locker room behavior, he didn't know how to act around women anymore. I wanted to believe him. Then came the touching. He'd pat her shoulder too long or stand too close when she was cooking. Charlie told me she was uncomfortable but didn't want to cause problems. I talked to my parents, but they said Jason was just lonely and trying to be friendly. My mom actually cried, saying Jason hadn't shown interest in anything since his injury. She begged me to be patient. I tried talking to Jason again, but he got defensive. He said I was rubbing my success in his face by having a girlfriend. He said I couldn't understand losing everything that mattered. I felt terrible and apologized, even though I knew he was wrong. That night I heard him crying in his room and felt like the worst brother ever. The kitchen incident happened 2 weeks later. I was in the bathroom when I heard Charlie yell. I ran out to find Jason holding his face and Charlie backing away. My parents were already there, and Jason was saying she hit him for no reason. Charlie was shaking and tried to explain that he'd grabbed her from behind and wouldn't let go. My mom started screaming at Charlie, calling her violent and unstable. My dad said she was taking advantage of their hospitality. I tried to defend her, but they wouldn't listen. My mom kept saying, "How dare you hurt my injured son?" Jason just sat there, letting them attack her while holding his face dramatically. They told Charlie to leave immediately. It was 11 p.m. and raining, but they didn't care. I begged them to let her stay until morning, but my dad said he'd call the police if she wasn't gone in 10 minutes. I'll never forget how small Charlie looked, throwing her things in a bag while my mom followed her, listing everything they'd done for her. I left with Charlie. As we sat in my car, I called my parents to say I was leaving too. My mom sobbed on the phone, saying I was choosing a stranger over my brother. She said Jason had been doing so well lately, and now he was back in his dark place. She actually said, "If he hurts himself, it's on you." Those words destroyed me. I cried harder than I had in years. Charlie held me while I broke down about failing my family, but I knew I couldn't stay somewhere that enabled Jason's behavior. We found a cheap apartment, and I've been working 2 jobs to afford it. My parents changed the locks and told extended family I abandoned my suicidal brother for a girl. They text me updates about how depressed Jason is, how he won't eat, how this reminded him of losing football. Each message makes me feel sick with guilt. My dad said I'm killing my mother with stress. Last week, my mom called crying at 2 a.m. She said Jason was talking about ending things again, and it was my fault. I rushed over, but Jason was fine, playing video games. He smirked when he saw me and said they were worried. I realized he was manipulating them with suicide threats to control everyone. But how do I tell my parents that? They're terrified of losing him. They've built their entire lives around keeping Jason stable. They see Charlie as a threat to that stability. I love my brother and my parents, but I can't sacrifice my girlfriend to maintain their delusion that Jason just needs more time to heal.